Ben's roll call vote, but if you want to call the meeting to order, we'll go ahead and do the roll call.
Okay, thank you, Eric. A virtual meeting of the MAG Regional Council is now called to order. Please remember to unmute your device before speaking and mute when you are not speaking to create a positive experience for all of the attendees. Phone participants should use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise their hand. The first item on our agenda, well, I'm sorry, thank you. Let's begin with a roll call of our members to establish a quorum. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Regional Council. I will go down the list of members. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Mayor Weiss? Mayor Orsborn?
Present.
I'm sorry, Mayor Weiss is here.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. Mayor Les Peterson?
Present.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Hertke?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo? Mayor Walter? President Burnett? Mayor Dickey?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Riggs? Governor Lewis? Mayor Bridget Peterson? Mayor Wires? Vice Mayor
Bridget
Hampton?
Peterson. Oh, sorry. Mayor Bridget Peterson's here.
Mayor Peterson, thank you. Vice Mayor Hampton? Here. Thank you. Mayor Molina? Mayor Schoaf? Mayor Price? Supervisor Hickman? Vice Mayor Thomason?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Carlott?
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego?
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman? Vice Mayor Brown?
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. President Javier? Mayor Ortega?
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Hall?
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez? Mayor Pereira?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault?
Yes, Ben, I'm here.
Thank you. Ms. Daniels?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Meck?
Here.
Thank you. And our chair is here. Is there anyone that I missed? Thank you. We have quorum.
Wow, okay. I was a little scared there. I didn't know that the rain would dampen the people's ability to participate in a virtual meeting. But for those of you who weathered the storm to be here, thank you a lot. The first item on our agenda is call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, have we received any public comments? And if so, please read them at this time.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Regional Council. No public comments were received for call to the audience or any other item on today's agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Our next item is the Executive Director's report. MAG Executive Director Eric Anderson will give this report. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start to give the report, just wanted to let the members know that the plan, as of today anyway, is to have to begin in-person meetings next month for Management Committee, Transportation Policy Committee, and Regional Council. We will have a hybrid option, and so there will be a virtual option. But I just want to let people, let the members know that at this point in time, anyway, we're planning to transition back into in-person meetings with the hybrid option. Let's go to the next slide. So on January 25th, MAG participated in the point-in-time homeless count. Over 400 volunteers from across the valley participated in this. We really want to thank all of you and your staff who helped volunteered in that effort. And in particular, the Maricopa County Human Services Department did a great job in supporting the count. This year's count was all electronic, so we had mobile apps, so gave us a little bit better ability to capture the data and do analysis. We expect to have the preliminary data by the end of this month, so this week might go into early next week. So look for that. We can go to the next slide. Just some photos of the homeless point in time count. I will say that it's clear that the numbers are up from the last time we did it. The last point in time count was done in January 2020. Did not do it in 2021 due to the pandemic. And we expect the figures to be significantly higher this year than the last count 2 years ago. We go to the next slide. Want to introduce Tim Franquist to you. Tim joined us on February 14th as the new MAG Environmental Director. Tim replaces Lenny Bauer, who retired at the end of December after 30 years at MAG. Big shoes to fill, to say the least. We're very fortunate that Tim decided to join our MAG team. Tim has a great background in environmental issues, including serving as the director of their quality division of ADEQ. His most recent job was deputy director of the Arizona State Parks Board. So Tim is already hit the ground running for the organization. So obviously environmental issues are front and center in much of the work that we do. Next slide. And finally, looking to ask our members for some help. As you may know, we do crossing guard training, school crossing guard training every year. We've done 400 to 600 training, crossing guard training participants each year. Obviously with the pandemic, it's been kind of spotty. MAG's done it for 17 years. Before that, the city of Phoenix did this. Unfortunately, we've lost some of our volunteer participants in this effort. And so we're going to be reaching out to our MAG member agencies to identify some staff that might be able to help us continue this important work. So look for that in the future. Once again, Margaret Hara, our program manager for our safety program, runs this program, does a great job. We need to keep our kids safe. So, Mr. Chair, that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. If there are any questions regarding Eric's presentation, please feel free to contact him after this meeting. And I think I'll keep our ears open for crossing guards and people that train crossing guards. That's a thankless job.
Yes.
Next item on our agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Items 4A through 4I are on the consent agenda. We'd ask the members to note that for agenda item 4I, that's the coordinated entry review consultant selection. The group met on Friday and have recommended the selection of Homebase. This is the same consultant that was working on the strategy, portfolio, and pathways home. MAG Deputy Executive Director Amy St. Peter and MAG Human Services Director Kelly Williams are available for any questions you might have on that item if needed. Does any member of the MAG Regional Council have questions or request a presentation on any of the items on the consent agenda? If there is none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, Weiss, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. I heard Mayor Weiss first. Is there a second for the motion?
Second, Mayor Ortega.
Thank you, Mayor Ortega. Mayor Weiss made the motion, seconded by Mayor Ortega. Ben, would you please take a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Regional Council. I will go down the list of members. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Orsborn.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hampton.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Thomason.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Carlat.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Woods.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Daniels.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chair, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed?
Mayor Price.
Mayor Wires,
Mayor Price, thank you. And Mayor Wires,
I vote aye.
thank you.
Mayor Hermosillo,
Mayor Hermosillo, thank you.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Mayor Schoaf. Aye.
And Mayor Schoaf, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Item 5 on our agenda is Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, an overview of the regional funding impacts presented by MAG Transportation Economic and Finance Program Manager, John Bowen. John, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the MAG Regional Council. Good morning. Happy to be here today to provide an update on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which we call IIJA. This act is also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or BIL for short. So as you read additional material, if you see either one of those acronyms, they both refer to the same thing. Next slide, please. So wanted to provide a bit of additional context today on the act itself. This is something that we have talked about in past meetings. We certainly anticipate that this is a conversation that will continue into the future. It's still early, information is still rolling out, but we certainly want to provide this update to provide you with what information we did have and set forth some expectations moving forward. So first, I wanted to begin, provide a little context. So as we talk about the different funding streams that are available to the region, we really have been focusing on the half-cent sales tax, certainly as we've worked through the development of the extension of Proposition 400 and some of the matters related to enabling legislation. Today, I wanted to pivot to the federal side of the equation. So as we've noted in the past, this region does receive a substantial amount of federal transportation funds that really enables these big, large regional investments we make, and what I will be focusing on today. Next slide, please. So the IIJA was signed into law back in November. As we've noted, this act does provide a significant increase in the amount of transportation funding available. It replaced the FAST Act that had been in place for a number of years. Really, we see across the board increases, both in the formula funding that's allocated to the region, to the state, formula funding allocated for transit investments, as well as federal discretionary funding. See a big increase there, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. As we talk about these transportation acts, they really represent one half of the equation. So in many instances, while the Transportation Act is passed, they require a companion bill to actually pass the budgetary portion. Some of the programs that we talk about are actually authorized as part of the Transportation Act, but the vast majority do require that companion bill, that budgetary bill. We are still waiting that. So a lot of the times when you'll hear we're still waiting for additional information, it's because that companion bill hasn't yet been passed. But that's certainly something that we'll be tracking very closely, and we will have additional information once that is done. Next slide, please. So I first want to start off by talking about the FHWA formula funds that are available to the region. So when we talk about the FHWA formula funds, those hit the MAG region in one of two ways. The first way is that there's formula funds that flow directly to ADOT. A portion of those funds are then made available through the regional freeway program, the freeway lifecycle program. There's a statutory allocation that's made available to the MAG region. There's also a smaller amount of funds that are distributed to the state and then are made available throughout the entirety of the state for member agencies to seek funding, what we call the statewide competitive processes. The second way that FHWA funds flow to the MAG region is to MAG directly. And so those are the funds that flow directly through our strategic investment plan and in accordance with the policies that you all had set forth. Next slide, please. So I first want to focus on the freeway side of the equation. So as I had mentioned, there's a couple different ways that those flow to the MAG region. One of the biggest increases that we do anticipate under the IIJA is a significant increase in freeway funding. We are still waiting for the final numbers, but we do anticipate that in our freeway program, we will see an increase between $40 and $50 million a year. So this definitely represents a fairly significant increase. The other way is formula funding that's made available for statewide competition. These are generally modest programs in terms of sizes. They'll certainly help to advance important goals. So a couple of the existing programs that you might be familiar with from past successes in your agency: Highway Safety Improvement Program, the Off-System Bridge Program. We do anticipate seeing increases in both of those. We don't yet know what the amount is. And then as part of the act, we are anticipating a number of new programs that will be apportioned on a statewide basis. So that includes the carbon reduction program, that includes a resiliency program, as well as an electric vehicle charging infrastructure program. The electric vehicle charging infrastructure program, that's one that we have seen significant interest in thus far, one that we're tracking closely. This is also one of those programs that there was actually an advance appropriation as part of the IIJA. So we've started to see information roll out a little earlier on that. We continue to track it and we'll be providing updates. But we do anticipate at this point in time that money will flow to the state with really an emphasis, at least initially, on the statewide network. Next slide, please. In terms of the MAG allocation, so there are funding types that flow to MAG directly. Those are programmed through our existing regional funding policy. Those include Surface Transportation Block Grant, congestion mitigation, air quality, so funds that tackle air quality issue, as well as transportation alternatives, which really allocated towards active transportation, bike ped improvements. We are anticipating an increase. We currently estimate that to be in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 million a year. So certainly, while not as large as the freeway program increase, a fairly significant amount. So we're tracking that closely. There will be a new program, again, a carbon reduction program. We don't yet know what the parameters are. We are awaiting further federal guidance, but we currently estimate that the MAG region will see about $9 million a year. And of course, once we get the additional guidance, we will start developing program parameters and work with you all to establish that program here at MAG. Next slide, please. On the transit side, when we talk about FTA funding, whereas the FHWA formula funding either flows to MAG or the state, FTA funding flows to urbanized areas or UZAs. So the largest one in the region, the Phoenix Mesa UZA, which covers the vast majority of the area, we are anticipating an increase of $25 million a year, so fairly significant. The second UZA in our area, the Avondale-Goodyear UZA, a more modest increase of about 1.3 million. Do want to take this opportunity to note that we do anticipate that the Avondale-Goodyear UZA will be absorbed into the Phoenix Mesa UZA, and that's based on changes at the U.S. Census Bureau, something that we continue to track closely. We'll provide further information, but did want to call that to your attention. Next slide, please. Then lastly, as I had mentioned, and really one of the features of the new Infrastructure Act is that it really expanded the amount of competitive grant-based funding that's available on a nationwide basis. So before, there had been some funding, the RAISE grant, the Infra grant, those are retained as part of the act. The amount of funding is actually increased to those, but then there's a number of new programs. Next slide, please. We do provide additional information in your agenda packet. This table details a few of them. I do want to qualify or caveat that when we talk about national discretionary grants, that's generally an extremely competitive process, very time intensive. So it's very important that agencies, that regions be very strategic in which grants they want to pursue. Usually there's requirements that the project has to be developed upon certain levels, but certainly provides opportunity for this region. Next slide, please. So where do we go from here? So we are certainly awaiting additional federal guidance about some of these new programs. We are eagerly awaiting a new appropriations bill. We've been on a continuing resolution, so we don't quite know where funding levels are going to land, but we do have an idea. And so once we get that long-term appropriations bill, we'll have some further financial flexibility. As I noted, however, one area we do anticipate significant investment is in our freeway program. If anything, this really underscores the need for enabling legislation. These large freeway projects are made possible through investments through our half-cent sales tax, as well as these federal funds. So these additional federal funds really put us in a position where we could potentially advance some of those projects we identified in the extension. But we really need enabling legislation. We really need to get to the voters in November of this year to be able to move forward with some of those large projects. On a more regional level, we are anticipating an increase in the FHWA formula funds. We are assessing how we might take advantage of those funds to perhaps jumpstart some of those arterial programs that we have identified as part of the extension. So we'll continue to monitor that closely. Transit funding, we'll be working with our MAG Transit Committee and through the committee process to allocate those additional funds. And then certainly with some of these new programs, track those closely, provide information as we get them, and work with your staff to make sure that we're taking advantage of the new funding. Next slide, please. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that completes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. I'm sorry about that. I had to find my cursor to unmute there for a moment. Are there any questions from the membership for John?
Mayor,
Yes. Go
could
ahead.
you give us an update on any conversations with Amtrak with which MAG has been involved, particularly on the planning side?
I'm sorry, that sounds like Mayor Peterson, but can you state who you are?
Mayor Gallego.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apologize. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Gallego, we have had some initial conversations with Amtrak. We haven't had any lately following the passage of the infrastructure bill, but that's certainly something that we can engage our partners at Amtrak and get an update from them.
Thank you. Several of the mayors who are here today had worked together on a letter in support of investments in our communities.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego. Any
Also,
other
a
questions?
question.
Yes, Mayor Ortega.
Thank you. Just generally for these different funding alternatives and prospects for them, do we have the staff to apply for those funds, or are there restrictions? Sometimes funds restrict the amount of administrative cost that it has to be absorbed by the organization. Just a quick question on that, because we want to know how our resources are spread staff-wise.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Ortega, historically in the past, as these large national competitive grant programs have come up, what MAG has done is act more as a support resource for the member agencies. So the member agencies have actually gone to pursue those grants. We've coordinated that effort, taken agenda items through the process. Certainly under the bipartisan infrastructure law, or IIJA, the scale and scope of some of those competitive grant programs does change. I think we're awaiting further guidance for really what some of those grant programs are targeted for, what the funding levels will be, and then perhaps revisiting really the region's role, if you will, whether or not we want to pursue more of a coordinated regional effort to try and secure those funds, or if we want to follow suit with what we've done over the past couple of years, which is really just a support role for our member agencies.
Thank you.
Mayor Giles, Kevin Herkey here.
Yes, Mayor Harkey.
Thank you for the presentation with the infrastructure. And I think I know the answer to my question, but is there any indication from your perspective of when we'll have maybe the next round of information that will help us augment the projects within Prop 400 extension? And I realize those are separate issues, what we're carrying on here, but any idea when we might know more from the feds on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor Harkey. That's a very good question. I think our next really big hurdle that will yield more insight, looking specifically at the Prop 400 extension investment plan, will be that longer term appropriations bill. And so Congress just passed a new continuing resolution to continue to fund the government, I believe through sometime in March. I think we're optimistic, and what we're hearing is that Congress seems to be acting on more of that longer term appro bill. But really, once that goes through, we'll have more stability, because really the big impacts of the Prop 400 investment extension plan come through that formula funding, and we'll have more stability and certainty there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Harkey. Any additional questions for John?
I just had a quick question. This is Vice Mayor Hampton on the infrastructure as well. So great presentation. I just had a quick question about, can the Prop 400 money, if that passes and everything, can this infrastructure money be used towards the same goals that are in the Prop 400, or is it they're totally separate and we need to? I mean, I'm all for going for the Prop 400, but I just wanted to verify that. I know it's early in the process too, so I'm just curious if go through there to satisfy those and also move some of those bigger projects forward as well, or if it's only a competitive funding opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Vice Mayor Hampton. Good question. So when we put together the extension of Prop 400, really what enables those big investments, it's not just the sales tax, it's also some of the federal funds that we receive. So as you know, with this increase, we do anticipate that we'll be able to take advantage, that we'll be able to leverage some of this new funding. However, when we're talking about large projects, such as a State Route 30, for instance, or even some of the light rail projects, it's not just one funding source that can deliver those, it's a combination. And so, you know, while this federal funding really will help us move some of those projects earlier, we are reliant on the sales tax funding, and you know, it really underscores the importance to get to the voters, get that extension of the sales tax funding in place so that we can issue debt and really start to jumpstart some of these projects. And so certainly it all helps, and certainly will help to advance some of that work.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Giles, this is Mayor Price.
Yes, Mayor Price.
Yeah, John, question for you here. I know that Ms. Daniels has a bill running through the House and Senate right now that is working towards getting money allocated towards a study of the Tier 2 for I-11. As you all know, the Tier 2 goes into a breakdown of segments of independent utility, and so to study each of those independently and individually costs a whole bucket of money for each one of those. And I'm unaware if ADOT is taking the lead on trying to draw some of this infrastructure money down for those studies. Will MAG be taking a lead position in doing that to get some of these things started to be studied and certainly knocked out of the way as we try and link all of these together?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor Price. Another good question. So in terms of how the funding actually flows to the region, so, you know, most of it is dictated by the existing funding policy. And so as we talk about the FHWA formula fund or other funding, we sort of have established areas that flows in. An I-11, for instance, the tier 2, which is really the next step that has to go. A lot of times completions of that effort or those efforts, you sort of have to look at the next phase as well too. So what's the next phase funded in the plan, whether it be right-of-way acquisition or construction? And so certainly the bill that's working through would help to jumpstart that. At the end of the day, it is going to require a fairly significant investment. We do see that investment being heavily reliant on federal infrastructure funding, just as in terms of the cost, the potential cost. And so I would say this will help support that effort, but that is an effort that would still need to move forward independent, if that makes sense.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So I'm just trying to understand though, I mean, again, I totally get what you're saying, but at the same time, these different segments require buckets of money in order to move through that next phase of the process. And so if, there is no $400 million laying around, and yet this I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I met with Senator Sinema yesterday, and we talked about this, and she basically encouraged us to say, look, if ADOT's not going to take the lead on this, then somebody else ought to, and they ought to go after this money, because this is exactly what this money is intended for. So I guess what I'm doing is more than anything is I'm really trying to challenge us and MAG to be the leaders in this, and saying if ADOT's not going to do this, then let's do our part and let's go after some of these buckets of money that are there through this investment bill, and let's start pulling these down for use in the study of the I-11 in these different various segments.
Yeah, Mayor Giles, Mayor Price, that's a good point. I think when you're talking about Interstate 11, certainly, the delivery of that facility across our state is really a statewide endeavor, if you will. ADOT will have to lead. But, to your point, it is important to, I think, continue to emphasize that investment, continue to push ADOT. But at the end of the day, that's a project that ADOT will be leading, if you will.
Shannon, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Any additional questions on this agenda item? All right, thank you. Great questions, great discussion. Again, this item was on our agenda for information and discussion only, so it's not an action item. The next item on our agenda is item 6 is a legislative update. MAG title or MAG Intergov Nathan Pryor will provide an update. Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. Before I start this presentation, just want to follow up on the last item, question from Mayor Gallego regarding Amtrak. Our last interaction was in person with the Senior Manager for Government Relations of Amtrak, focused on West Coast operations. That meeting, in-person meeting, was in October, so I had an opportunity to better understand where Amtrak is positioning themselves for all things West Coast, in particular Arizona, noting that letter of support for developing facilities in Arizona, and we maintain contact with that office. So didn't want that to go unacknowledged. Turning to a federal update, as Mr. Bolin pointed out, looking at the next appropriations bill, we are operating under a third continuing resolution set to expire March 11th. Understanding that the negotiators are working on a budget deal that would fund the federal government through the end of the fiscal year. So trying to avoid a fourth continuing resolution and get appropriations through the end of the federal fiscal year. Understanding also that some of the program spending details are not being widely shared as those negotiations continue. Also noting that the focus is on a balanced deal to garner the votes in a 50-50 Senate. That means balance, meaning defense spending versus non-defense spending, but also with an eye in terms of regional issues, eye on, of course, housing, affordable housing, homelessness, and environmental issues, and those fundings and programs that could potentially come to our state and region. So we will continue to track that. Turning to our Arizona legislature, We've seen a number of recent movements on bipartisan efforts to address housing and homelessness, in particular this week, and really within the past 24 and 48 hours. Apologize in advance. Normally, when we go through a number of bills and a list, we would have a slide for that. But these are strike everything, striker bills. Some of this is a bit fast moving. So just acknowledging the lack of a slide with this list I'm about to go through. First off, Senate Bill 1117. This would exempt affordable housing from taxes. Senate Bill 1263, directing funding to the Arizona Housing Trust Fund to be used to support homeless shelters. Senate Bill 1581, allowing the Department of Housing to distribute grants to municipalities or counties for the establishment of sanctioned campsites for homelessness. Noting that there's conversation among members of the Appropriations Committee, which did pass this 9-1, regarding potential legal challenges of that. We've seen that in the 9th District Court. So those issues are going to be further discussed as it potentially heads to the floor. My last two here on housing and homelessness, Senate Bill 1716 would create a board to address mental illness among those who are experiencing homelessness. And lastly, Senate Bill 1531, a striker bill would allocate $100 million to the Arizona Housing Trust Fund. This would be one-time money. So a lot going on the housing and the homelessness front, and the legislature will continue tracking this, and of course, how these bills relate in the implementation of our regional homeless action plan. So we will do more study on these bills, potential impacts to the region, and report on those going forward. Next slide, please. Regarding our enabling legislation for the continuation of the half-cent sales tax for transportation in Maricopa County, we have been making positive headway on Senate Bill 1356, sponsored by Senator Pace. We saw that pass out of the Senate Transportation Committee on Monday, January 31st, a vote of 9-0. Also similarly on February 14th, and the Rules Committee was deemed proper for consideration. That bill should be heading to the floor committee of the whole soon. On House Bill 2598, the companion bill sponsored by Representative Carroll, that passed out of the House Transportation Committee on Wednesday, February 9th. A vote of 8 affirmative, 3 noes, and 1 absent. You can see on the slide there what the bill does by way of reminder, extending the tax for 25 years, puts in place the Regional Strategic Investment Infrastructure Investment Plan, guiding funding allocations, allocating 100% of sales tax revenues with guaranteed minimums, prescribes process for major changes, affirms the role of the Transportation Policy Committee, and establishing a 14% cap on light rail. During testimony on the House version of the bill, we did hear concerns from the Trucking Association and home builders. Representative Carroll and Senator Pace did hold a discussion of which Mayor Giles, Mayor Wires participated, coming to some agreement on addressing the issues by Trucking Association and home builders. So an amendment has been proposed. It did pass in the Senate version. Providing clarity to regional programs is one provision, clarifying audit language, requiring MAG to consider truck parking, and clarifying plan allocations, also providing flexibility to change allocations. All these amendments are within the parameters of the approved plan that the Regional Council approved in December of last year. Leadership discussions are ongoing. Obviously, as I stated, the Senate bill continues to move forward. And also on the House side, conversations among the bill sponsor, House leadership on next steps in moving the House bill forward, in particular as it would need to go to rules before it goes to the floor. We thank you for your continued support on this. We hope that you will continue to reach out to your respective legislators in support of this effort. Particular note of thanks on the January 26th Regional Council meeting, a letter reaffirming the vote approval of the MAG Regional Council signed by MAG regional elected officials, copied to Transportation Policy Committee managers and intergovs. Of course, thank you to Mayor Giles and Mayor Wires who spoke at the House and Senate committees, and also those conversations, as I noted, regarding the amendments. So thank you, member agencies, for all your support. We'll continue working this. We continue working closely with the business community as well. Their support is appreciated and necessary in moving this initiative forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Questions for Nathan regarding his presentation? I have one, Nathan. Obviously, this is the Prop 400 extension is moving as we had hoped, but to me, it seems like the big challenge here is the emergency clause 3/4 vote, and particularly, it seems like we were maybe a vote or two short in the House the last time I heard. Has there been any progress made on that, and do we need to encourage, our mayors to assist in lobbying any legislators to make that happen?
Yes, Mayor Giles, thanks for that. Of course, we appreciate our regional elected officials continuing outreach to legislators. Of note on the House rules, we continue to work with leadership, understanding that more conversations are to come with, again, House leadership and trying to map this going forward, looking for votes. So yes, continued outreach by both our member agencies and the business community is certainly warranted at this time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but it's not time to spike the ball yet. We are still trying to get across the finish line here. So I would just urge everyone on this call to continue to keep this at the top of your legislative agenda as communities, because it's not a done deal by any means, and we're going to need, those of us on this call and our business community partners are still going to need to put the pressure on our legislature to get this thing on the ballot. Any additional questions for Nathan on the legislative update?
Mayor Giles, this is Jenny Dickey. Hi.
Hi, Jenny. Go ahead.
So our people in our region in our district are asking about the breakup of Maricopa County bill, and just wanted to know if we had any sort of official saying about, or position or whatever on that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Nathan, any light you can shed on that?
Yes, Mayor Giles, Mayor Dickey, thanks for that. We continue to track that bill, understanding it probably has a long ways to go. We're trying to understand any potential impacts to the region, meaning MAG as an agency and the duties that we do carry out, even beyond transportation. So we continue to develop those potential impacts and monitor the conversations around that bill effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, membership, on our legislative efforts? All right. Thank you, Nathan. Again, this item was on the agenda for information and discussion only. Item 7 on our agenda are requests by a regional council member for an item on a future agenda. Do we have any requests? All right, hearing none, moving on to agenda item 8. Are there any comments or announcements from our membership? All right, thank you. Hearing none, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for participating in this meeting. That concludes our agenda. Business is now closed and our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.